Leah. Anna, what's your point of order?
I'm really disgusted in this whole day, and I want to apologize to the two witnesses for coming all this distance to help us solve a problem that women in this country are being killed and the other parties don't care. I'm disgusted. We need to be talking about this issue so that we can stop.
Yeah.
Shame on you. I'm done. I know. We can't do this anymore. No wonder nothing gets done in this country. Shame on you.
You have granted me the honor of speaking on behalf of all men, women, non-binary, and children, survivors of violence. And I want to state from a survivor's perspective, Trudeau doesn't care, Ford doesn't care, Arif doesn't care, and the government doesn't care.
It's no surprise to me that all those dumb oafs don't care. They're losers, just like our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and his filthy, rotten, stinking cabinet of shuffled cards of jokers. In this video, though, they will all be exposed. We've got MP Michael Cooper coming up. We've got Kate Alexander going to make an appearance again. She's got the Conservatives at her back. We've got our Minister of Justice, Sean Fraser, who is the total opposite. This guy hasn't touched a portfolio that hasn't turned to shit. He's useless. Anyhow, the video is still going to be interesting. They've got chaos in London, Ontario. My name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get into this and see what we're going to expose. Larry Brock's in this one too. It's going to be a fun video, hard to watch as we expose the Liberals right here. Canadian Looney.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
All right, we're going to flip into this video. It's going to be about the goof you see on the screen, but it's done by MP Michael Cooper. He's a cowboy from Alberta. Giddy up. His videos are full of information. He's a very interesting guy. Let's get this going.
Mark Carney and the Liberals have a censorship agenda. This Liberal government has repeatedly abused the power of the state to silence voices and perspectives that they don't like, trampling on the freedom of speech and freedom of expression of Canadians. As you probably know, the Liberals passed Bill C-11, which gives Liberal-appointed bureaucrats the power to limit what Canadians can view and listen to online. And then there's Bill C-63, which could subject Canadians to house arrest for hate speech, not for something they actually said, but for something someone thinks they might say sometime in the future. But here's a Liberal censorship law you may not have heard about. It's actually a pretty big deal, but it hasn't received the attention and scrutiny that some of these other bills have. And that's because the Liberals quite deliberately snuck this censorship law into an omnibus budget bill at the 11th hour, hoping that Canadians wouldn't notice. I'm talking about the gag law in Bill C-59 targeting Canada's energy sector. This gag law makes it all but impossible for Canadian energy companies to tell Canadians, to tell investors, and to tell the world about their significant progress towards environmental sustainability, including their successes in reducing emissions.
We work hard to do the right thing. It is patently unreasonable to expect a company to spend tens of millions of dollars, as we are doing, to go well beyond compliance into a place of discretionary, voluntary leadership and not be able to shout from the mountaintop the good things that we're doing. It's patently unreasonable to expect that of any company.
This law would invite every word, every syllable of an environmental benefit claim by a company to be challenged before the competition tribunal.
It sounds like this legislation makes it dangerous to speak up about your environmental work.
The challenge is in the way the legislation was drafted, it comes with this consequences that creates enormous and unfair legal risk, reputational damage risk for companies that are trying to do the right thing. And so what do? They stop doing the right thing.
And here is where it gets crazy. Truth is not a defense. It is not enough for a company to establish that its environmental representations are truthful. You heard that right. Under the Liberals' anti-energy gag law, the truth doesn't matter, facts don't matter. Instead, the onus is on companies to establish that their environmental benefit claims are based on an adequate and proper substantiation, whatever that means, in accordance with a so-called internationally recognized methodology that very conveniently isn't defined in the law.
Instead of getting that clarity, what they got was confusion. And in some cases, those standards weren't widely understood. There was no guidance accompanying those standards. And I think the business community had a lot of legitimate concerns about how to apply them in practice.
Companies that fail to substantiate their claims based on this undefined, internationally recognized methodology can face punitive fines of up to $15 million per representation. And to top it off, this liberal anti-energy gag law opens the floodgates to radical environmental groups to bring forward frivolous actions against energy companies before the Competition Tribunal. Before this law, only the Independent Commissioner of Competition could seek an order against a business under the applicable provisions of the Competition Act. But now, under the Liberals' anti-energy gag law, non-governmental and not-for-profit groups have a new private right of action. So it's obvious what is going on here. This is all about shutting down truthful and evidence-based information about Canada's energy sector that gets in the way of the Liberals' radical, anti-energy, keep-it-in-the-ground agenda. And any company that dares to step out of line risks being tied up in litigation, harassed by radical environmental groups, subsidized with taxpayer dollars by Mark Carney's Liberals, and forced to defend the truth against a vague and completely subjective standard, failing which they risk being hit with punitive multi-million-dollar fines. It's draconian, it's Orwellian, and it's exactly what the Liberals are all about, controlling Canadians through censorship to advance their radical agenda.
All right, just so people know, Michael Cooper is the best heckler in the House of Commons, hands down.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
I'm a big fan of Larry Brock right here. He should be our Minister of Justice. He will be our next Attorney General. He's got a story to tell. I don't wonder why.
This past weekend, Canadians saw two horrific crimes that proved just how serious our public safety crisis has become. Early Sunday morning in Vaughan, armed intruders broke into a home and gunned down 46-year-old Abdul Alim Farouki in front of his family. That same weekend in Niagara, police charged a 25-year-old man with sexually assaulting a toddler during a home invasion. He had just been released from jail in March, 6 months early after a conviction for a previous child sex offense. These tragedies happened in the very same weekend, and they follow a week where we saw a Metro Vancouver Transit police officer assaulted by a man already on probation for 2 earlier assaults. Over 80 shots fired in downtown Hamilton that sent 3 victims to hospital, and a Halifax woman arrested for robbery while out on bail. Conservatives have put forward real solutions. We put forward a stand-on-guard principle in the criminal code so Canadians get the benefit of the doubt when defending themselves and their families from a violent home invasion. We've called for repealing the Liberals' catch and release laws, C5 and C75, which keep violent criminals on our streets. And we've advanced our protection against extortion plan to crack down on gangs and organized crime. Yet Sean Fraser, Mark Carney's Justice Minister, dismissed Conservative proposals for change by stating that Canada isn't the Wild West. That comment downplays the reality Canadians are facing every single day. Enough is enough. Families deserve to feel safe in their homes. Children deserve to feel safe in their communities. Canadians deserve a government that takes public safety seriously. After a decade of rising crime, this government needs to stop denying reality and finally put public safety first. It's time Canadians had the right to defend themselves, their family, and their home.
All right, Larry Brock is the man, no doubt about that, one of our favorites to watch. He will be the Attorney General, Minister of Justice after the next election. Fingers crossed.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Gang, did I just show a clip of Kate Alexander here when she was testifying in front of committee? It was a humiliating experience for this young woman. Let's take a look and a listen. She's real sharp and has had some experience with the consequences of these liberal policies. Let's check it out.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be alive. I'm Kate Alexander, actress and founder of charity End Violence Everywhere. We support survivors of intimate partner violence and sexual assault and families facing the impossible, femicide. On July 31st, 2021, I was nearly murdered by my ex-partner in Leaside in Toronto. And despite having photos, videos, and the tactical team coming to my house to rescue me, my ex was released on bail for $500 the very next day and began to stalk me, which precipitated my move to the US permanently. I have never had a criminal trial for my attempted murder because of Jordan's Rule, which was a 2016 policy implemented by Trudeau and the Supreme Court. Our justice system is beyond broken. I call it the injustice system. And I am so sick and tired of the headlines. I'm so sick and tired of serving women from all across this country. 98% of these perpetrators against these women have never, ever been to jail. 98% child rapists, murderers, sexual abusers, child pornography users, over and over and over again. We see it, it's crazy, it's insane, and this country is not what we grew up knowing it to be. As a young girl, the bad guy goes to jail. Not anymore.
Oh, yeah. Things have gotten so bad in London, Ontario that they've got their police chief now begging the federal government for help. Do you think they're going to get any from the feds?
When I became your police chief over 2 years ago, I made 3 priorities clear. That's community trust, organizational wellness, and community safety. These priorities are more than words. They are about action. That action includes being more transparent and accountable with and for our community. That means sharing positive, transformative changes that we've made, but it also means that we're being upfront when there are public safety concerns. Last year, our city saw a 48% reduction in gun violence, down to 14 shootings. We had not seen this number this low since 2020. But over the summer, particularly August, there was a surge in gun violence. We had 6 shootings in the month of August. That has brought us to 16 shootings so far. I want to speak directly to one of those incidences. In a recent shooting, over 30 rounds of ammunition were fired into a home and a parked car in a residential neighborhood. Inside that home was a family that, based on our investigation, had absolutely nothing to do with this crime. We believe they were the wrong target. Thankfully, no one was physically injured, but this was an outrageous act that could have claimed the lives of innocent people. This kind of violence and the total disregard for public safety is a symptom of a larger issue, and that larger issue lies with the criminal justice system. I want to be very clear. We need bail reform. We need bail reform now. We need to review the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and we need harsher sentences for those convicted of serious violent crimes and repeat offenders. Too often, those responsible for shootings and violent crimes are repeat offenders. And too often, they are already on bail or some form of judicial interim release. We're also seeing a troubling increase in both the frequency and the severity of crime committed by young people. And far too often, violent offenders are being released back into our community way too soon, only to reoffend.
We need changes. London is in big trouble. So is the rest of the country. With this government, we're in trouble.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
We're going to take a look at Sean Fraser, our Attorney General, Minister of Justice. What an injustice. This guy is pure trash, I assure you. Let's take a look.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'll start just with a few words, if you don't mind, and then happy to take what questions you may have. Look, we're here gathered in Edmonton, and I'll tell you there's a lot of enthusiasm in the room right now. We've got an infectious attitude, particularly with so many new MPs here for the first time. Very excited to help their communities and to advocate for a stronger Canada. People are particularly excited about the announcement today, moving forward not just with the Major Projects Office, but the first projects being designated. And they're excited about implementing all the commitments that we've made over the course of the recent federal election campaign. Part of the discussions that we've held today touch on my portfolio, of course, given the imperative to enhance public safety and to address criminal justice reform in Canada. Over the course of the next few months, we are going to be advancing measures that's going to help adopt stronger laws and build safer communities. We're going to be starting off with a series of measures, some of which are in queue already, that's going to expand the authorities of law enforcement to investigate and to prosecute crime. Of course, we've got the campaign commitments that we've made in the recent election around hiring 1,000 new RCMP officers, 1,000 new border officers, and additional prosecutors to make sure that they can keep up with the increased demand that these additional law enforcement and investigative tools are going to deliver. In addition to the resources on the ground to help keep communities safe, of course, we are going to be adopting stronger laws when it comes to the criminal justice system. Over the course of this fall, you should see several major pieces of legislation coming out of the Justice Department seeking to help build safer communities. Specifically, you should expect to see us more than make good on our campaign commitments when it comes to implementing tighter bail reforms, including clarifying the role of bail in the criminal justice system, including reverse onuses for serious and violent crimes, auto theft, home invasion, human trafficking, assault, sexual assault. You'll also see a number of different measures that strengthen sentencing for violent repeat offenders, for serious crimes, to ensure that the perpetrators of those crimes face serious consequences. We intend also to address very serious challenges with delay in the justice system, to ensure that we don't have serious crimes thrown out or stayed purely because they've been taking too long. This is particularly important for survivors of sexual violence and for investigations that deal with complex drug prosecutions. In addition to this piece of legislation that will likely deal with bail, sentencing, and delays, we also intend to move forward with new measures that will help protect victims of intimate partner violence. You should see new sexual offenses established, including the non-consensual sharing of intimate images and non-consensual sharing of deep fakes. There will be several other measures that touch not just on sexual offenses and intimate partner violence, that also protect kids against online exploitation, and we'll see more support for victims through the criminal trial process. In addition, we want to advance measures that will help address the scourge of hate crimes that we see in this country, including specifically faith-based communities, but also hate against identifiable groups more broadly. I'm looking forward to advancing a series of different measures in the next number of months. I'm excited to work with my colleagues to build a stronger Canada, and I'll tell you, we get a lot of support in that room to help make this country a safer place. Thank you very much. Happy to take what questions you may have.
Hi, Minister. Thanks for this. Lisa Mayer, CBC News. You're talking about all this legislation that you're proposing this fall. How soon? Do we have a date we can expect to see some of that?
We should expect to see in the very near future the legislation dealing with intimidation and obstruction of those participating in their faith community, as well as hate crimes more broadly.
Just to be concise, in the very near future, this guy talks a lot of bullshit.
Next month, we anticipate we will be in a position to table the legislation touching on bail and sentencing. Subsequently, during this parliamentary setting, depending on how efficiently the process of the House works and the collaboration of other parties to advance this legislation to get it done, we expect to see that third piece of legislation tabled later in this parliamentary sitting that would deal with intimate partner violence, protecting kids online, and victims in the criminal justice process.
Great, thank you. And just following up on your comment about some faith-based community, there have been calls from Jewish groups to create nationwide safety zones because of a rise in hate and more security protection. Is that something you're looking at doing?
So I've had the opportunity to engage with the Jewish community over the course of the last number of months, most recently actually here in Edmonton, hosting a roundtable with members of the Jewish community locally in advance of our caucus meetings here. We have to make sure that we can do what's within our bailiwick, and that we also encourage other levels of government to take measures to improve public safety that are within theirs. Specifically, when you're talking about specific safety zones, regulating the ability of people to be in a particular place is not something that falls to the federal government. However, criminalizing morally culpable behavior that may take place in proximity to those institutions or elsewhere is something that we do have the authority to move forward with. Specifically, what you should expect to see is when we're dealing with those facilities that are meant to serve an identifiable group. Think of a synagogue for the Jewish community, a mosque, a church, but also community centers, schools, or specific places that are designed specifically for a given community. We want to add criminal provisions that would prohibit the obstruction of those facilities and the intimidation of the people seeking to use them. In addition, we are looking to establish new measures that would address hate more broadly, that is coupled with other criminal behavior that may take place regardless of its proximity to a particular faith-based institution.
Thanks. And going back to the timeline you provided about legislation, I believe you said the first legislation would be around would be the faith-based and communities issue, and you said very near future, and then the bail reform would be next month. So safe to say that first legislation would be this month in September, the next couple of weeks?
Look, it's subject to final decisions taken on the legislative schedule with our House Leader and to events that may always intervene in these circumstances. We intend within the first few weeks, if not sooner, to advance the legislation pertaining to hate and obstruction and intimidation of faith-based institutions, and at a date we're still working toward in October for the bail, sentencing, and delay legislation.
Thanks.
Hi, Minister Fraser. Kyle Duggan from the Canadian Press. I have some questions from my colleagues in Ottawa who could not be here today. Looking to find out what you think of Pierre Poilievre saying that if a person has a list of prior convictions, then they are a, quote, guilty criminal that's been newly arrested, and therefore we are justified in keeping that person behind bars until the trial and or the sentence are complete.
Look, the proof of prior convictions is an important factor, but what we're trying to do when we are moving forward with the bail and sentencing legislation is not to pick off one issue here and there that may excite the public, sometimes for very good reason, by the way, but instead taking a comprehensive view to figuring out what we can do to actually address the concerns that people are raising with us. It's important that we not only advance these measures to improve the public safety outcomes for communities, but to ensure that people actually have faith in the justice system, that they don't feel they need to live in fear in their communities. These are the kinds of factors that we may look at. I noticed a number of the reflections of Mr. Poilievre that I've seen come out of his press conference today actually mirror some of the campaign commitments that we made in the recent federal election. If they are willing to work alongside us to advance reforms that will help keep communities safe without necessarily aiming solely to gin up dissent for a political purpose, then we would be more than happy to work alongside them. In the meantime, we've got a lot of work to do. We've been engaged heavily with our provincial counterparts, not only on the legislative reforms we may put in federally, but the investments they could make on the ground to carry out their areas of responsibility. Whether that is NDP, Liberal, or Conservative governments, we want to work alongside all of them.
Thank you. And also curious where you got with your plans for the online harms bill, and if you have a clearer picture of what that might look like. The legislation's been stalled for a long time, and now there are new and emerging issues such as harms caused by AI and online chatbots. Thank you.
Certainly, and you'll appreciate that some of the responsibilities when it comes to criminal behavior online may fall within my legislative purview. I hesitate to speak for some of my colleagues, notably ministers of heritage and artificial intelligence, who I know will have something to say about their aspects of any legislative efforts that may take place in this space. Suffice it to say, from a justice perspective, keeping our kids safe online against predators and protecting victims of sexual exploitation online is a key priority, and you should expect to see measures reflecting both of those public policy areas in one of the pieces of legislation coming up this fall.
So online harms this fall?
Just to clarify, there are certain criminal behaviors online that will be the subject of some legislation. I'm not referring to the measures that may fall within the purview of some of my parliamentary colleagues who would have a better read of the timing of their specific areas of reform that they may wish to pursue.
Okay, thank you.
All good?
Sean Fraser is such a clown, gang. He's a loser. Why is he always sweating so much? Oh, he's just gross and incompetent and misleading. He's a very dangerous person. It's sickening. On a lighter note, my name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. We're exposing the Liberals for what they are. When I started this channel 2 years ago, I really was not in the loop. The last time I had voted in a federal election, which had been 2015, I voted for Trudeau. I didn't know, but it doesn't take very long when you're paying attention to find out the way that these grits are ripping you off for their own personal futures. It makes no sense. They don't care about Canadians or our economy or the housing crisis or the immigrant. They mean for these things to be happening. It's straight up a fact. I'm leaving this video here at the end. It's an investigation by committee into the Kate Alexander story, and it is so embarrassing the way the Liberals treat her. They make her testimony about abortion. Anita Vandenbeld, we haven't forgot about you. Oink, oink. We're going to expose all you Liberals. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. We're trying to grow the channel. Smash that subscribe. Share it with somebody. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Till next time, have a good one.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Oh, yeah.